to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet corner of the night where your thoughts can rest and your dreams can gently unfold. Tonight, you'll be drifting into a story about an old, hidden piano that plays songs from forever, where time slows down and every note carries you deeper into peace. For now, there is nowhere else you need to be. Let your body find a comfortable place. If you wish, you can close your eyes or let your gaze soften on a single point. Feel the gentle weight of your body being supported. There is nothing you have to hold up right now. The bed or the place where you rest is holding you. You can let go. Take a slow, deep breath in, letting the air fill your lungs like a soft, expanding wave. Then let it flow out unhurried, like a tide returning to the shore. With each breath, imagine exhaling the day. Little details, little worries, small unfinished tasks, drifting away for now. You can pick them up again in the morning if you need to. This moment belongs only to you. Notice the places where your body touches the surface beneath you, the back of your head, your shoulders, your arms and hands, your hips, your legs and feet. Let each of those points soften as if they are melting gently into the mattress, sinking just a little deeper into comfort. You have made it through another day. The outside world can rest now. Whatever happened is behind you. Whatever comes next can wait. This is the soft in-between time, just for breathing, just for listening, just for drifting. As you continue to breathe slowly and comfortably, imagine a gentle hush beginning to surround you. It is like the quiet that falls in a concert hall right before the first note is played, a calm expectancy, a tender silence. In that silence, a story begins to form, like a distant melody carried on the night air. It is the story of a piano that has been playing since before anyone can remember, in a place where time seems to loosen and stretch, like a long, lazy yawn. A piano that remembers every song, every sigh, every dream. As you listen, you can allow yourself to drift along with it, knowing that the story will carry you softly and slowly toward sleep. Far beyond the bustle of busy streets and ticking clocks, there was a town that people sometimes forgot to put on their maps. It lay at the very edge of a quiet valley, cradled by hills that rose up like gentle shoulders, protective and calm. The air there always seemed a little softer, as though it had been warmed by years of whispered secrets and distant lullabies. In that town, on a street that curved like a sleepy smile, there stood an old music shop. Its sign hung from a rusted chain and swayed ever so slightly when the evening breeze passed by. Faded gold letters spelled out a name nobody bothered to read anymore because everyone simply called it the shop. The shop's windows were clouded with time. Their glass had grown milky and soft around the edges, and dust traced delicate patterns along the wooden frame. Yet if anyone pressed close enough to peer inside, they would find not a forgotten place, but a space filled with quiet life. Violins resting in their cases, guitars leaning companionably against the wall, shelves lined with neatly stacked sheet music that smelled faintly of paper and vanished summers. At the very back of the shop, half hidden beneath a gauzy sheet that shimmered with the slightest breath of air, there stood a piano unlike any other. Its wood was dark and deep, polished by years of careful hands and reflecting light in a way that was soft rather than sharp, as though it absorbed the brightness and sent it back as warmth. The keys were not perfectly white and black. Some had faded to ivory cream, others to a soft, smoky charcoal, the colors of distant clouds at dusk. People in the town rarely spoke of that piano. They knew it was there. They had always known, but they treated it the way one treats certain dreams, acknowledged, respected, and then carefully set aside. Not because it was dangerous, it was simply more than they were ready to understand. The shop belonged to an old caretaker named Elian. Their hair had silvered with time and fell around their face like soft strands of moonlight. Their hands were strong but gentle and carried the faint scent of varnish and old wood. Elian had watched over the instruments for longer than most could remember. They tuned the violins, polished the cellos, and carefully dusted each corner with a patience that felt almost timeless. Most days the shop was quiet. Occasionally, a curious child would press their nose against the window, leaving a small cloud of breath that quickly faded. Once in a while, someone would push open the door, making the bell above it jingle in a thin, bright voice, and they would ask about a guitar string or a missing note. Elian would help them, smiling with the slow, knowing warmth of someone who has heard 1,000 beginnings. But when the sun slid behind the hills and the last streaks of color dimmed to a tender blue-gray, the town would grow still. Windows would glow for a while, then soften, then darken. Crickets would tune their legs and begin their night song. And in the music shop, where the shadows gathered like patient listeners, Elian would light a single candle. The flame would paint a small golden circle on the wall, and in that circle, the hidden piano seemed to breathe. The sheet covering it would stir, as if remembering the feel of fingers on its keys. Elian would move toward it, each footstep slow, unhurried, as if keeping time with a song only they could hear. They would lift the gauzy cover with practiced hands, folding it carefully and placing it aside. The piano's surface would catch the candlelight, reflecting it in fragments like distant stars caught in polished wood. The keys revealed seemed to hum with a soft expectation. "Elira," Elian would murmur, as though greeting an old friend. "It has been a long day. Shall we play a little while?" The piano had a name, Elira. It meant forever in a language most had forgotten, a language that curled like smoke at the edges of memory. Some said it was older than the town itself, that it had been there when the valley was still learning the sound of the wind. confirmed or denied this. They simply smiled and touched the keys. On a certain evening when the air outside was especially still and the sky had deepened into a velvety blue that seemed almost liquid, the bell above the shop door chimed softly 3 times in a row. Elian looked up, surprised. Nighttime visitors were rare. In the doorway stood a traveler, wrapped in a weathered coat that carried the faint scent of distant rain. Their eyes were tired but bright, as though they had been awake for far too many nights, carrying thoughts that refused to set down their luggage. They lingered a moment on the threshold, as if wondering whether they had truly found the place they were looking for. Elian smiled, the candlelight catching the kindness in their face. "Come in," they said quietly. "The night is gentle here." The traveler stepped inside. The bell gave a final soft jingle and then fell silent, as if it, too, was settling down to listen. The air in the shop wrapped around the traveler like a warm blanket. It carried the smell of old wood, paper, and something else, something almost indescribable, like the scent of the first note before it is played. "I was walking," the traveler began, their voice a little hoarse from disuse. "I thought the road ended, but then I saw your light." "The road does not end," Elian said, as though stating something as simple as the color of the sky. "It only turns. Sit, if you like." There was a wooden chair near the piano. The traveler sank into it with a quiet sigh, feeling the weight of journeys settling down through their bones. Their hands fell loosely into their lap, and for the first time in a long while, they did not feel the need to hold on to anything. "What is that?" the traveler asked after a moment, their gaze drawn toward the instrument at the back of the shop. Elian followed their eyes, then looked back with a soft, knowing expression. "This is a lyra," they said, "the piano of forever." The words drifted through the air and seemed to linger, as if the syllables had found somewhere comfortable to rest. The traveler's eyes half closed, not out of disinterest, but because their body, tired as it was, felt oddly safe here. "The piano of forever," they repeated, the phrase settling on their tongue like a quiet spell. "What does it play?" Elian ran their fingers lightly along the edge of the keys, not pressing down yet, just brushing the smooth surface. "It plays what needs to be remembered," they said, "and what needs to be released. It plays the spaces between yesterday and tomorrow. It plays all the moments that feel too big to hold alone." The traveler said nothing. They did not need a detailed explanation. Some part of them understood, deep and wordless, as though they had been searching for something like this all along. "Would you like to hear it?" Elian asked. The traveler nodded, the motion small and slow, like the nod of someone already halfway inside a dream. Elian took a seat at the piano bench, closing their eyes for a brief heartbeat as if greeting a familiar silence. Their hands hovered above the keys, not yet touching, simply feeling the hush that had settled in the room. Outside, the wind stilled. The crickets grew quiet, even the old wooden beams of the shop held their breath. Then Elian began to play. The first notes were soft and low, like the sound of a distant river at night. They flowed out of the piano in a slow, steady stream, curling around the traveler and filling the small space with gentle resonance. Each tone seemed to reach not just their ears, but the spaces behind their eyes, the corners of their thoughts, the places where worries had built small, stubborn nests. The melody unfolded with no rush, no urgency. It did not try to dazzle or impress. It simply moved, one note after another, like footsteps on a well-worn path. The traveler felt their breathing fall into rhythm with the music, in and out, up and down, like the rise and fall of distant waves. The lyra remembered, as it always did. It remembered a child once, long before the traveler, who had sat in the same wooden chair with their legs too short to reach the floor. The piano had played then as well, weaving a song of curiosity and wonder, a lullaby for a mind too bright to sleep. It remembered an old woman who had come with hands shaking, carrying a small photograph pressed to her heart. For her, a lyra had played a melody of gentle letting go, each chord a soft hand easing her fingers open. Now, for the weary traveler, a lyra listened. There was no need for words. The piano could feel the tightness coiled at the center of their chest, the fragile threads of thought that had tangled into knots over countless sleepless nights. It heard the echoes of all the things left unsaid, undone, unresolved, not as burdens, simply as notes waiting to be arranged. And so it played. The melody turned inward, folding and unfolding like slow, deep breaths. Higher notes floated through the air like drifting lanterns, light and tender. Lower notes hummed like a reassuring voice in the next room. Harmonies blossomed like flowers opening at dusk, almost invisible, but undeniably present. The traveler's eyelids grew heavy. Their head tilted slightly to one side. The hard edges of their thoughts began to blur at the corners, softening like ink spreading quietly through water. They felt as if they were sitting at the edge of a great calm lake, watching ripples spread outward in widening circles. Time in the little shop began to loosen. Minutes no longer marched in straight lines. They drifted, swirled, and curled lazily around the notes, becoming something more fluid, more gentle. Elian at the piano barely seemed to move. Their hands glided over the keys with the ease of someone pouring water from one vessel to another. They did not search for the right notes. The notes found them. Each sound that emerged felt inevitable, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. The traveler thought for an instant that they could hear something else under the music, a murmur of voices perhaps, or the soft rustle of turning pages. They wondered if these were the countless songs that a lyra had played through the years, all of them layered in the air like translucent sheets of memory. The traveler did not try to understand. They simply listened and allowed themselves to drift. In the space of that drifting, the story of the piano of forever unfolded itself quietly and without urgency. Long ago, when the hills around the town were still finding their shape and the valley had not yet learned the word border, there had been a house at the very edge of the world, or at least that was how it felt to those who lived there. The sky stretched vast and unending above them. The stars seemed close enough to touch, and sometimes on the clearest nights, the air rang with a kind of music that did not come from any instrument. In that house lived a maker. Some said they were a carpenter. Others called them a dreamer. They were perhaps both. Their hands knew the language of wood and sound. They would sit at their workbench long past midnight, fashioning small things with patient care. Boxes that sighed when opened, chairs that never creaked, frames that hummed softly when touched by moonlight. One night, listening to the sky, the maker heard a melody that made their heart ache with a strange, sweet longing. It was not a sad song, but it held within it all the tenderness of things that end and begin again. The maker knew deep in their bones that they must find a way to bring that sound into the world, to give it a place to rest. And so, with wood from an ancient tree that had watched over the valley since before anyone could recall, the maker began to build. They carved and joined and shaped, not in haste, but with the slow devotion of someone weaving a promise. They lined the inside of the instrument with thin, delicate strips of silvered metal, each one inscribed with a single word: remember, release, breathe, dream. When the work was finished, the maker rested their hand on the polished surface and closed their eyes. For a moment there was only silence. Then, gently, they sat at the bench and pressed the first key. The sound that emerged was unlike any they had heard. It was both very near and impossibly distant, like the echo of a lullaby from another room, another time. It carried inside it the hush of forests at midnight, the soft lap of waves on a forgotten shore, the tiny, steady heartbeat of someone sleeping deeply. The maker smiled through tears they had not noticed forming. They knew then that the instrument they had created could hold more than melodies. It could hold moments. It could cradle memories and soften their edges, could gather up the frayed strands of time and weave them into something gentle. They named it Elira. Forever. Back in the present, in the quiet of the little shop, the traveler's head dipped forward and then lifted again. Their breathing had grown slower, deeper. Each inhale felt like a tide advancing, each exhale like the tide retreating, smoothing the sand behind it. Elira's music had wrapped itself around them like a soft cocoon. Inside that cocoon, the traveler's own story drifted free of its weight, not to be erased, simply to rest. Elian shifted the melody, guiding it toward a place of even deeper stillness. The notes began to stretch, leaving more space between each sound. In those spaces, the traveler could almost hear the quiet beat of their own heart, steady and sure. Inside the traveler's mind, scenes flickered softly, like old film moving slowly through a projector, a childhood room filled with sunlight and dust motes dancing lazily in the beam, a summer evening when the air had smelled of cut grass and distant rain, a moment of laughter shared on a park bench, a long, solitary walk under a cloud-covered sky. The piano of forever did not judge these memories or arrange them according to importance. It welcomed them all equally as one welcomes guests into a warm room on a cold night. Each moment sat for a while in the music's glow, then folded itself up and drifted gently away, lighter than before. The traveler, somewhere between waking and sleep, felt their shoulders loosen. The knot at the base of their neck softened. The thoughts that had once marched in sharp, worrying patterns now strolled lazily along the edges of their awareness, then wandered off into the dark, content to leave the traveler in peace. Elian opened their eyes just enough to glance at the weary figure in the chair. They saw the softened jaw, the half-parted lips, the slow rise and fall of the chest. They smiled, knowing that Elira's work was well underway. Outside, the night deepened. Clouds drifted lazily across the sky, revealing stars, then veiling them again. An owl somewhere in the hills turned its head and listened, as if hearing faint echoes of the piano's song carried on the cool breeze. In a nearby house, a child turned in their sleep, curling closer to their blanket, as though sensing the gentle music moving through the valley. The shop seemed to grow larger and smaller at once. Larger because the music made space inside it, stretching the tiny room into something vast and open. Smaller because everything unnecessary fell away, leaving only the quiet, the traveler, Elian, and the piano. A small constellation of presence glowing softly in the night. Elian let their hands drift into a final, tender chord progression, the musical equivalent of tucking someone in, smoothing the blanket at the edges, brushing a stray lock of hair from a sleeping brow. The last notes hung in the air for a long moment, then dissolved into the dim light and the hush of the room. The traveler did not move. Their breathing was steady and deep now, their body heavy with good, honest rest. Even though their eyes were closed, there was a faint hint of a smile at the corners of their mouth, like someone who has set down a heavy pack and finally feels the relief of their own lightness. Elian rose from the bench without a sound. They moved with the slow, practiced care of someone who has spent a lifetime in the company of sleepers and dreams. With reverent hands, they drew the gauzy cover back over Elira. The fabric settled gently over the piano, blurring its shape and giving it an almost otherworldly glow in the candlelight. "Thank you," Elian whispered, not to the traveler, but to the instrument that now rested quietly, its work done for the night. Until the next song. The candle's flame flickered, then steadied. Its light grew softer, the edges of the room blurring into a comforting haze. Shadows pooled in the corners, like deep, restful water. Elian placed a folded blanket around the traveler's shoulders, tucking it lightly beneath their arms so it would not slip. The fabric was thick and warm, carrying the faint scent of lavender and starched cotton. The traveler stirred only slightly, then leaned more fully into the embrace of the chair, body surrendering completely to rest. And so in the little shop at the end of a quiet street, in a town that did not always appear on maps, the night moved on. The piano of forever slept beneath its veil. The caretaker kept watch, not as a guard, but as a gentle presence, ready to tend the flame and the silence both. Time, which had loosened and stretched during the music, now settled into a slow, steady rhythm. Outside the world turned, the stars wheeled, the hills kept their peaceful vigil. Inside, the traveler's dreams began to unfurl, soft and unhurried, blooming like pale flowers under moonlight. The dream that came to the traveler was simple and kind. In it, they found themselves walking through a wide, open field at dusk. The grass brushed gently against their ankles, cool and forgiving. Fireflies lifted into the air around them, tiny lanterns blinking in unhurried patterns. There was no destination, no deadline, no sense of needing to be anywhere else. There was only the quiet pleasure of moving through a gentle landscape. In the distance, they heard the faint, familiar sound of a piano. Not loud, not demanding attention, just a soft presence, like a friend humming in another room. The melody was the same, and yet not the same as what they had heard in the shop. It drifted in and out like a breeze, weaving itself into the sound of crickets and rustling leaves. As they followed the sound, the horizon shimmered with a tender light. No harsh glare, no blinding radiance, just a kind of luminous dusk that never quite faded into darkness. The traveler felt their heart relax in their chest, as though it too had found somewhere to rest. In that dream there was no rush. Each step could be as slow as it needed to be. Each breath could be as deep and easy as the lungs desired. The piano notes seemed to echo within their bones, reminding them of something they had always known but sometimes forgotten, that it was safe to rest, that the world would continue to turn even if they let their eyes close, that their worth was not measured by how tightly they held on, but by how gently they could let go. Back in the shop, the candle burned lower. Its flame shrank to a small, steady glow, then to a faint golden ember. Eventually, Elian pinched it out, plunging the room into a darkness that did not feel empty at all. It felt full, rich with the quiet presence of rest and dreams. In that darkness, the traveler remained, wrapped in the soft blanket, surrounded by the silent company of instruments and the lingering echo of the piano's last chord. The night cupped them in its hands and held them with infinite patience. The hills outside breathed their slow, deep breaths. The town slept. The stars watched. The road that had brought the traveler here curved gently onward, waiting without expectation for whatever new footsteps might find it when morning came. But morning was far away, for now there was only this deep, restful night. In the tender quiet of these final moments, the story itself began to slow and soften. The words grew hushed, padding softly like bare feet on a darkened hallway. Sentences became gentler, lighter, until they felt as if they might drift away at the slightest touch. You, listening somewhere far from that little shop, can feel yourself drifting too. The details of the story can blur and fade as they wish. You do not need to hold on to them. You do not need to remember every note or every word. The feeling is enough, the softness, the safety, the sense of being allowed to rest. If there are any last thoughts reaching for your attention, you can imagine setting them down quietly on a small table by the door of sleep. They will wait there for you, patient and unchanged. Until morning, you do not need to carry them into your dreams. The breath moves in, the breath moves out, slowly, easily. Your body is heavy and warm, held by the bed, by the night, by the gentle quiet of this moment. The muscles in your face soften. Your jaw is relaxed. Your eyelids grow heavier, more comfortable. The space between one thought and the next grows wider and more peaceful. Somewhere in the soft folds of imagination, the piano of forever waits, calm and patient. It is never in a hurry. It knows that there will always be another night, another traveler, another story ready to be held and eased. For now, its keys are still, its wood rests, its name hums quietly in the dark, a promise that the music of rest is always there, just beneath the surface of the world. The shop is quiet, the hills are quiet. Your mind is quieting too. Each breath carries you a little deeper into soft darkness. Each exhale releases a little more of the day. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go, no one you need to be, only this. Only rest, only sleep. Let the story dissolve completely now, like mist in the early dawn. Let the last echo of the piano fade into silence. Let your thoughts become slower, softer, until they are no more than gentle ripples on a deep, still lake. You are safe. You are held. You are allowed to drift away. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.